For anyone that you're a stranger to, tell us as much as you want about you. Like,
No, yeah, okay. That's a great way to phrase it. No. um I am just a University of Texas Longhorn, honestly, that fell into esports. I actually came to UT, Texas native from A&M area, Texas A&M University vicinity, and didn't want to go to that big state school. It's one of the biggest in the nation. Like 60, I think they're trying to get 70,000 students.
what's the
This
size difference between you and them?
We are sitting around like 50, 55,000 if you include like grad
It's
students,
still
and
so
they're
big.
60, 65, I think, shooting for 70, 75, or something stupid like that. I've heard from admins, and I'm just like, geez. But they have a little bit of a different vibe to them. I won't speak
Mm,
too much. Um, they're really well known in Texas as like being like almost like a cult following of sorts that is
mm,
like good or bad depending on how you want to look at it. UT was kind of like is like the rebel school, the more liberal school, as people like to say.
yeah.
The blueberry and the tomato soup is what I hear a lot of people, or I've heard as an interesting phrase of like describing Austin and UT inside of Texas. So that's pretty interesting to think about.
Blueberry and
Um,
tomato soup. I have no
yeah.
clue what you're saying.
Okay, never mind that. Never mind that. If anybody in politics, yeah, could educate you on the side. No.
Wyatt
um,
probably would. Wyatt probably knows exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, but basically, I graduated high school and was looking at esports related schools or schools that had things going on esports related. And this is like 2015, so there was only like a handful of schools that had something official, of course. And in Texas, there was basically nothing. But I saw Texas Esports Association slash Longhorn Gaming at the time kind of popping off as a student club or whatever they were, because they were transitioning or in their first couple years of being like an arm of Blizzard at the time.
Yeah.
So I saw that and was like, UT's really cool, really good school. It was my backup school, but I went anyway, and spent basically the next 6 years involved in that club, getting really, really passionately connected to the League of Legends players and the League of Legends community, which is essentially what the club was like centered around. It was originally a StarCraft club, as many of the OG like collegiate
Yeah.
esports organizations were in college. Um, and then kind of transitioned into being basically a League of Legends club, with of course all these other sub communities on the outskirts, and the Smash community blossoming into its own student organization as well. And throughout my like 5 years I spent there from 2015 to 2020 as a student, I got to kind of really integrate myself into the surrounding kind of like esports ecosystem in Austin that was kind of growing out of different places. One was Dot Esports at the Daily Dot. It's a local. It was a founded in Austin, the Daily Dot online publication, and they made a bunch of different verticals inside themselves. You know, geek culture or esports was one, and et cetera, et cetera. And I saw them coming to Longhorn Gaming and started to kind of like sprout my media wings through them, and did a lot of videography, photography, video editing for them. And once their video team died, it split out all across a bunch of different media startups in Austin. Ended up working for those, as well as creating media content for Longhorn Gaming, that student club on campus. That eventually I helped transition into a sponsored student club, so kind of like elevating that registered student organization into a you know basically like a sub department of a real department, or like
Yeah, I
a
think we have the same
student
thing
group.
here where it's like it goes a little bit further than the normal student orgs where they get like a little bit more uh access to the budget and say so and whatnot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The TLDR is, there's budget now from the university. It's not like all grassroots driven or self-made stuff. It's like
Yeah.
you get support. You get attention and support from the university more so, and not just like you could reserve rooms, which was the only real big thing that you could do when you register as a regular student organization. And that happened with the student union. So that was the big first step of like creating um, esport, or making esports more official on campus, of course. And I graduated, worked for a mobile esports company in the area called Tribe Gaming. They're like the number one North American mobile esports content collective, creator collective, whatever, what agency, whatever you want to call them, as well as
Yeah.
like mobile sports teams. And then quit that job once I kind of like started feeling like I outgrew my position there, and then wanted to prepare myself to work for UT once a position became available to advise the club and manage a space and start building like an esports brand on campus and program eventually. So that's where I'm at now after about 10 or 11 months of
Yeah, how'd you know they
being
were gonna
employed.
bring up a spot?
So before I graduated, I was the first esports intern for the student union group on campus underneath student affairs. So they already were in close communication with me after they reached out, and I think they reached out to the club, and I was president of the club at the time, and they were like, "Hey, I hear all these other state schools doing something with esports." At the time,
Yeah,
now UT Arlington, UT Dallas, which are other sister schools to University of Texas at Austin, which is like the main campus, biggest school. Um, we're doing something esports related. They had a small space. They had really big, donations to this idea that they didn't really understand, and they had teams and high level recognition from like the board of regents or whoever
yeah, yeah.
above everybody. And so they were like, how do we integrate e-gaming, what they say, and into campus in some sort of capacity.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
a couple different bodies on campus kind of like caught wind of like esports is coming and different campuses in different ways. That was like the College of Fine Arts, the communications school a little bit, um, the engineering school even was like in talks
And they
about
all
it.
wanted a piece of it?
Yeah, it's like they all wanted to basically figure out if they could be the champion of it and benefit from it the most and put their brand on it. That's how I
Yeah.
guess if you're not from a big school, that's how big schools work is like they kind of internally compete. All the colleges want their brand of their stamp on whatever it is that's coming from UT so they get more students coming to them and more everything else or whatever. Um,
It's
so
it's the same with some private schools. Some private schools really want to, like, champion where it lives in, but then other schools like mine, it doesn't matter where it lives in 'cause, I guess it's a little bit less departmentalized in that sort. It's more like the whole school as a whole because it's so small, they kinda support each department, but they're what you're saying, like, your whole story, a lot of this has happened here in Ohio too. So, like, Kent State started doing something and made Ohio State do something, Cincinnati
yep,
State started doing something, and then your story closely matches, I was talking to a girl from Ohio University, the Bobcats, and they did the same thing where they brought in an advisor intern to, like, see what it is and how they could do it, and I think now they're at the stage of, like, hiring someone, so you've already done the hiring part, I think they're doing what you just got done doing the past you said 10 months?
yeah, kind of. It's been like there has been always like the president of the club and maybe that like handful of people at the top of the club advising as an intern or like half hire, right? That's not getting paid, of course, but is like giving feedback on like how spaces should be built and like event support or whatever. And now yeah, that full position was kind of like instated once there was a need for retail management actually. So that's the angle that they were coming from because we had a space built approximately like 1 year ago now, built by technically Dell directly, and my area on campus just kind of like cleared out the space. A small like 600, barely over 600 square foot space for a, a land center, and
Yeah.
we kind of got that running. They got that running by themselves, but they didn't know what to do with it. The current admins. So they were just thinking we need somebody to run it like a business and charge hourly rates and make sure that it's a nice reservable space and people are happy and et cetera, et cetera. So they're looking for somebody to hire to manage that, but there was of course a lot more back end or like work behind the scenes that they didn't realize that this position should integrate into, and that's where I've been kind of like filling in those gaps and teaching them that this position should be working on bigger picture ideas, which is building out that program.
Yeah. And, with the retail and selling, did that follow through? Was that successful to where they wanted to keep doing that? Are they pressuring you to keep doing that?
Yeah, so that's where I'm at right now because it wasn't initially the original system it is free to use to everybody on campus. Yeah, so I see you pulling it up now. So this is the Alienware Longhorn Esports Lounge that I'm talking about, that 600 square foot LAN center. This is in our
Is that what it looks
student.
like right now?
Yeah, yeah. So this is our
That's
student union
crazy.
with it's like really, fancy HDR photography where they took a bunch of flashes all over the room to make it look really spaceshipy. But it's definitely a different looking space than anywhere else in the building. The building's 100 years old almost. It's about to have its
Yeah,
like
yeah, I'm in the
90.
same kinda yeah.
Yeah, it's like about to be 100 years old, and we have this spaceship type thing inside of it is what it looks like to a lot of people, and it's super cool that it's in a high foot traffic area. And maybe it's kind of sticks out as a sore thumb in some people's eyes, but really great to capitalize on like people coming in from West Campus where a lot of people live, which is technically off campus, so they just call it West Campus. They come in through this like area and walk through the union and figure out, there's a bowling alley here, there's air hockey and pool tables, and oh, now there's an esports arena. So that's where like
So it's
my
like the main
department plugged it
community
in.
hub?
Yeah, it's one of the main community hubs because we have like another student union basically across campus, and there's a bunch of other buildings, but this used to be the only one back when the university was in its infancy, but now it's like trying to catch
Gotcha.
up and be cool still.
Yeah.
This is its way of trying to catch up and be cool.
Mhm.
Um,
And
oh,
are you,
I
like, expanding go on, sorry.
I forgot to say that like the whole like charging aspect and revenue model started actually in June in the summer this past month. So we are getting summer feedback of a few dozen students here and there, orientees when they come in, but it's still kind of like in a testing phase where I'll figure out next month once school starts up, is this like really going to be sustainable? Are we going to get a crap ton of pushback? What's going to happen?
Pushback
I'm
from students?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah. Is the
tuition,
idea is charging them or charging outsiders?
so the idea right now is doing an hourly rate for all students that are going to be using the space, just like
Oh,
any other retail. Yeah,
I could see you
yeah,
getting some pushback with that.
yeah.
So,
I mean, of course, it's going to be
I don't know
natural.
all the details of what Akron did, but Akron started off that way too. They had a big space and they were renting it out. Um, man, I don't remember what they said recently. I went to a
Well,
NACAD regional with them. Go on.
I just talked to Hunter. It's been a long time,
Yeah,
but
mhm.
Hunter's from Texas. He went to Abilene Christian,
Oh,
and
okay.
I was like, yo. So I hit him up because I was actually gonna go and visit Akron because I was like, wait a minute, Akron seems to be really really good. Everybody tells me it's a really really good place to kind of like reference models off of because we're similarly positioned with like multiple spaces because we're building a second space, and we're gonna kind of use the spaces differently. So he mentioned that they did start off charging and it just kind of like fell flat and they ended up cutting it and scrapping it and finding other ways to fund themselves, especially with summer camps.
Yeah, I definitely would go visit. I visited before I started my program, and just right off the bat, I saw, like, having distance between where you are, even if you have multiple people to manage it, it just, it disorganizes things. It, disconnects whatever it is you're trying to connect. So, like, even if you want one space to be club, another space to be varsity, another space to be whatever else you want, like production or something, that distance is, like, counterintuitive, it just makes it a bummer to, like, manage. So, first off, I was like, "I wanna be in my own building." I don't want it to be spread all over campus, so they got a new ONU got a new engineering building when I first got there, and their old engineering building was completely empty, and I was like, "Alright, I want these 3 rooms, I'll fill this up with, like, 40 PCs, an office, a production room." And then as we grow, because I was like I didn't know if like, I could have failed, and I was one of the first, like, 10 schools in Ohio doing this, and the school thought I was gonna fail, I thought maybe I was gonna fail, so I didn't wanna take too much space, I was being kind of like, frugal, I guess, is maybe the right word, just, cheap with it, not wanting to spend too much of their money and make it more of a disaster if it was a disaster. Uh but it ended up being really good, and then when, I was starting to get the idea of, like, I wanna expand, get, like, a console room for Smash Brothers and stuff like that, maybe expand production or VOD review rooms, people took over every other space all around me, and I think that's, like, a theme with a lot of universities is, like, if there's space open, someone's gonna take it, and I
Yeah,
don't know if it was
that's
the
what
same
Doc
for
said,
you.
right? Doc said it basically at the um, NACAT
I may
event
have
where
missed it, but, like, I'm sure he would, yeah.
yeah, the first I think it was the first couple conversations he mentioned was like their space, and this is at Boise. Um, they or no, it was their like second space I think, where it was a small room, and then everybody else yeah took over other rooms, and they ended up having to move because they
Oh,
needed
yeah,
more
I
space,
remember
but they
when
took
they were
too
in their
long.
classrooms is what they were saying.
Yeah,
Mm,
something like that. But yeah,
mhm.
so for me, honestly, there isn't really any space. It was just like we can convert this space if we, if enough like funding falls in our lap, then like
Yeah,
might as well. Um, we I think something I'm thinking about that could be possible is that we just kind of like push out things that we think could be of more value to the community and to the students if it were gaming and esports related, because like there's still going to be like pool tables and air hockey tables in the vicinity kind of
yeah,
outside of the new space, the arena, which is directly beneath the current lounge. And if we end up like overwhelming this arena space with viewers, because I'm there's no real like viewership area or viewing area,
yeah.
so I could see how like we can end up pushing things out of the way, but we're super limited on space at our campus, especially I feel like.
Yeah, and, like, there's a lot of different, like, pros and cons to, like, having a space like that and whatnot. Because I know, like, when Boise started, they were, like, the main people to have a space to have, like, a LAN and showcase it and whatnot, and they just didn't have high schools around them, they didn't have other colleges around them, the space just wasn't getting used, but then it ended up being really good. I don't know if they planned for this or they just, like, went with it because they had the space, but then, like, developing their production crew and having the production space to do that, super relevant. I when my program was starting, a lot of other programs around us, everyone was talking about, like, how to I don't know if they took Boise and they were like, "How do we get an arena where we can have people spectating and have all that stuff?" And most of us small private schools, we don't have stuff around us to where we'd have a big audience come out, and, like, the high schools around us, most of them are, like, three-hour drive. That'd be them, like, staying at a hotel if you do, like, a normal LAN, because LANs are usually, like, 13 hours in a day or maybe 2 days. So, I didn't do any of that stuff. I advised a lot of people to not do that, but I think for you, it'd be, like, really beneficial because I think Texas, if it hasn't already blown up, and you can talk about that after, is going to start blowing up. I think if you don't have a high school association yet, you're gonna have one, and it's just gonna get huge. I think you're gonna have more and more colleges, more states copying you guys, and more privates copying the privates that have already been doing it too.
I haven't gotten like numbers from this high school area, or middle school even, but I've been getting requests pretty much since day one, since like my position was created, since the lounge opened up, and that's like nearby schools 2+ hours away that they're driving from in the rural parts of Texas.
Yeah.
That all started clubs of some caliber, or at least one little team, and want to come out and see what UT's doing. So it's like we're prime positioning. We're in a prime position to actually like do a high school championship for Texas, state
Yeah.
championship, because we're right in the center of Texas. Everybody already comes to UT Austin when you compete in UIL, which is University Interscholastic League, like academics. So when you compete like in academic competitions, you go to
Oh, okay, yeah.
regionals, and you go to state, and state is hosted. The state championship for those things is hosted on campus. Um, why not have it for also whatever esports league that they're a part of? And I'm thinking that they're doing it right now in sort of like esports stadium Arlington, if there's any sort of connection there that they can make, or UT Dallas or something like that. But we should be stepping up once the arena comes online, because we'll have the space for it basically. um,
Yeah, and see, like, it seems like you guys are growing in a different path than you guys being Texas, a different path than Ohio did. So Ohio, we got a bunch of schools, the high schools followed up afterwards, but most of the schools didn't really gear towards hosting things and bringing people out. So, like, if you would visit Akron, you could also visit, Cleveland, Kent State, uh, and maybe also Cleveland State. I don't know if they have a bigger esports thing. I think they do. I think they're building their own, but they were renting out the basketball team that's there. I don't remember the name, but they have their NBA 2K esports LAN center that's pretty geared out.
Oh,
They got like 40 PCs, good production around it. And they
nice.
made it to where it could be like a lot of streamers in the room and stuff like that. But they didn't use it that much either. They couldn't get people to come out to their events. They were trying to link it towards, like, NBA games, and gamers weren't doing that link. But most of their money is made through high schools renting it out, colleges renting it out, because like, Kent State and Cleveland State have been renting it for a while. And, yeah, it sounds like it's a easy revenue stream if you have people within the area. But then
Yeah,
it's gonna get weird because you also have a huge club. You're gonna have varsity teams if you don't already have it, and you won't be able to share that space. It's gonna be omega used.
yeah. It's gonna be a delicate balance because you're right. We do have a dozen teams that we'll have to figure out which ones are really gonna be like UT esports varsity level, etc. And who's gonna get that priority access, of course. But then if we do start doing events that are integrating high schools or middle schools, state championships, or even like I'm seeing pro teams like semi-pro or amateur teams like trying to find spaces for practice, like long-term practice or hosting their events or activations.
Yeah, yeah.
This is all gonna like bubble up on top of each other if like we want to be open to everybody, and we started to see like small hints of that with our small space, and like when they're when the word got out of the arena coming online, it's like, oh crap, okay, we I need to I need to basically start thinking about who to prioritize between all of those, and what's actually going to be like our north star to help us like make these hard decisions of like who to prioritize.
Yeah, and is it mostly you making those decisions? Or you and a supervisor that's in touch with what's going on? Or is it like you were hired as the expert to, like, figure this
Yeah,
out, just figure it out type thing?
I I have a lot of input, so that's good. I am managed by the senior retail manager of this building specifically, or this kind of group of buildings. So that's
Can you
and we
explain retail manager? Because when I hear
yeah.
that, I think like a store at the mall.
Yeah, and honestly, kind of. So that's where I, again, remember the angle that my department's coming from is like how to plug in esports as a revenue generator, revenue generating space, just like a
Yeah.
bowling alley. So I'm underneath the bowling alley manager basically, and then
Oh,
above
okay.
him is like the director of facilities and operations of all of the buildings that fall under our university unions like department. So that's like all the student union esque buildings on campus. We being that first OG one from 100 years ago, um, we kind of get a lot of focus, but um, it's still like them at the very top making those high level decisions and kind of asking me, does this make sense for the students, because they don't really know what the students want from this side of campus, or like how to what the teams need or whatever. Um,
And
what
again,
what
the
was
money to be made was from the students. Like when they say retail, they're trying to retail towards students and their families and whatnot. Kinda like
uh
a bookstore, clothing shop like we went to at Boise.
Yeah, so they weren't really sure at first, and it's kind of like, what are all the different models? Well, sponsorships, charging hourly, renting the space. Those are pretty much the main ones, and they just didn't have an idea of like which one would work in our specific context. So I'm gonna be trying to lean away from, of course, charging hourly, trying to get more sponsorships since we are such a big brand. We just need to put our name out there, but we don't have a cohesive name. Alienware Longhorn Esports Lounge isn't an esports department, or UT Esports, or Texas Esports, or Longhorn Esports. So it's kind of confusing, I'm sure, to people. It looks like it's already branded, and nobody would probably want to like come out of the woodwork and say like, no, I want to fight Dell and Alienware to,
Yeah.
give you money instead, or like, no, it should we need to put out our messaging a little bit better there. But yeah, so the idea is basically whatever works. We can't fund our entire building and operations through like student union fees because our school is so big. So we're in like an auxiliary um, category. There's like categories of buildings and areas of campus. So auxiliary buildings have to generate basically all their own money, or be self-sustainable.
Is
So
that the
we
same with your? Because 'cause I'm sure there's probably, like, differentiating between, like, what you're doing with the building and the facility, and then also the esports part of it, like the, It's both esports, but, like, the club or the varsity teams and whatnot. So, I'm guessing you're in the middle of pushing back on that? Could you go in more detail of that or no?
Yeah,
Do you get
I
what I'm
think I'm
saying with it?
I'm kind of confused on the question.
Yeah, so you're talking about how the building and you being in charge of that building, and maybe there's someone before you where it's like, "Generate this revenue, you're in that auxiliary building, you're supposed to be doing that." But then
One thing real quick clarification. This building's like, you know, employs like, 100 people. So it's a really big building. I'm just like one little tiny
yeah,
section of
yeah,
it. Okay,
in
okay.
your own, like, spot of it, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay.
But that spot is also supposed to be hosting the esports club, the esports people, the esports students, the gaming community, uh, but it's sounding like it doesn't make complete sense to be retailed out like that, right? So what's the pushback of, like, the varsity teams, the esports clubs? I'm assuming there's multiple clubs because it sounded like you were talking about, like, there's the Smash Club and a couple others, so it's fragmented like that? Is it still fragmented? This is, like, a super loaded question, so
Yeah,
yeah.
communities are still fragmented for the most part, but they are working together more and more. There isn't pushback yet because we haven't started charging for the space for anybody. Like this first
Mm.
pretty much full academic year that it's been operational since I came on in September as a full time employee, it's been free to everybody, and I just kind of like facilitate um, team reservations, student org reservations, whether they're gaming or esports related or not. Maybe it's just like a random, nursing club that wants to just host a social or whatever.
Yeah, we've had the
I
same stuff. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like facilitating all of that, getting feedback from there. Now that we're starting to charge, I do now am going to obviously I'm going to get pushback, but yeah, it's just like I have to figure out now. It's going to basically give me incentive to want to try to make sure that we're not going to be relying on this income and tell my superiors, hey, look how much it's not being used now. When we had 2,500 students come through when it was free, obviously it's going to go down when we charge, but it's not like even a 50, 60, 70. It's more like 80, 90, 95% decrease.
Yeah. Now, even regardless of the price and whatnot, is the space that's there's a space coming too, right? Being
Yeah,
built?
it's opening up in, safe to say, like end of this upcoming semester, like November.
And all the same structure, wanting to make money from it and have it be self-sustaining type thing, right?
Yeah, basically a bigger version of the lounge, which is 600 square feet. This one's going to be about 3,500. And it'll have also a production component, which of course people are like, oh, we can sell that too. And I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
hmm.
It seems like you're in the building where, like, that's gonna be the conclusion of, like, anything that happens in there.
Yeah,
Um,
makes sense. Like no hard, like if they were watching, it's like I understand where they're coming from,
no, no, it's
but
completely understandable. It's
yeah,
just a
but
new concept that I've heard of. So, like, I've heard of a lot of different concepts now of, like, different state schools doing different things, different private schools doing different things. This one's by far, like, the most rare. Yeah, it makes sense in, like, a city where you have like, I think a good amount of people will come through for, like, their clubs, parties in the summers, just random student use. You probably would get success from that. But then if I put myself in your shoes, I feel like I would get a ton of pushback from the students that wanna use it for just practice, and they wanna have consistent practice every week, and they want it to just be a normal thing as if they're, like, almost an athletics team type thing. That's where it's probably gonna get weird for you, I assume, yeah?
yeah, we will have, like our separate space that's like 8 computers in a room that will be just for, varsity teams, or maybe like varsity teams and then have first priority, the club teams have second priority. But that's still only 8 computers for potentially a lot of club teams and, a couple varsity teams. Um, I don't know how frequent the reservations are going to be, but I could see if we market it appropriately, we could probably in one day have the camps and the events throughout the year by external non students or UT affiliated people, and UT affiliates be able to kind of like create enough revenue that we don't even feel like it's necessary to charge hourly anymore. That's where I'm thinking it's gonna maybe be a possibility that we can push for.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Um, man, I keep not wanting to interrupt and then I forget my This is why I need a script. Uh So I'm trying to like tap into like what I did, what it's like for you at a scale. So like I definitely did like the first string varsity, second string JV, and then third string like club level. And I have 25 PCs, 2 rooms, and my club level people are not able to use those rooms. And I only have 4 games going. I have Rocket League, Valorant, Overwatch, and League. And it just sounds like it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
And
Okay, actually, that's something that I should be like really tapping on you and others on for, or like tapping you for,
Yeah,
because
and I'm trying to, like, relate my small school into your big school because I'm sure, like, each of your clubs is almost as big as my whole program, maybe.
well, I mean, yeah, every single one's very diverse and like differently organized. Like say
Yeah,
the
like, how
league
big is
one.
your Smash club?
Uh, okay, yeah. It's like if they put on like their big free, intro event, they're pulling in like 100 people or something. But some of them are going to be outside of UC. Um, but
But, like,
yeah,
if they
they.
wanted to practice and
Oh,
like,
yeah. I
think
mean,
like a
they
varsity
have two
team
teams.
yeah, like, think of, like, a varsity team or a JV team or whatever, like, string team, whatever you wanna call it, wanting to use the facilities. It I'm assuming the school's, like, big in-person type thing, right? Like, you're gonna have players that are dormed up and then apartments, commuting, but they still would like the idea of a space to play, and you're trying to fulfill that, right?
Yeah, and I could see the 10 or so like A and B, crew battle teams like wanting like really consistent usage of the already like set up, stations in the console area.
And then I
And
don't wanna scare you with this, but then when you multiply that with, like, maybe a CS team, a League team, a Valorant team, an Overwatch team, that's a lot of PCs and, a lot of time because they're probably at the point where they would want to some teams would wanna practice, like, 15 to 20 hours a week, and then when you start multiplying that, because that's what my teams do. My school's pretty intense academically, so we don't push, like, any more than, like, 15 hours a week with all of our teams, but I'm assuming other schools are able to do a little bit more, and I know these other schools do a little bit more, the ones that, like, compete nationally and, like, win, like, national championships. I mean, they're playing in the summer, they're playing, like, probably 30, 40 hours a week. That's
yeah, that makes sense. And that's where like I
is this
guess
scary to hear, or was it already
well,
in your brain?
something to emphasize, or something I want to emphasize, is how that the actual esports component, from in a traditional sense of esports, the word, and outside of academia, it's like I'm not super focused on, I want
Yeah,
the teams to be able to compete and play in the spaces at their, most fair leisure. But of course, like, I don't have the time as a one person team managing, two different facilities.
you're kinda
The
managing something different and then trying your best to help out the other.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like doing advising the student club, and then having to kind of like work with Dell and Alienware obligations because of their branding and their sponsor or donorship.
yeah,
um it's just like that takes up 99% of my time, and I pull basically from the club leaders, the current esports director of the student club of Longhorn Gaming, and say, set rules, set guidelines that the teams all have to follow to actually
yeah,
get use of the spaces. Hopefully only like the most, fair and understanding and actually like adamant and communicative ones or teams, follow those guidelines and come together and are basically going to run themselves like they have been. But I'm just making sure that the usage of the space is fair. That's where I can kind of like see for at least the first year. After maybe a year of like having both facilities being operational, and the teams kind of like now have an understanding or precedent of like how the space is used and like what it means to be varsity versus club for space usage,
yeah.
then we can elevate that to like, setting, more defined goals for like the actual teams and competition and practice times and everything like that. But at the moment it's just like, all right, you guys do what you got to do, and just let me know when you need the space.
And so that story and everything with, like, the facilities and you helping make this happen for the school the way the school wants you to make it happen, that all makes sense. Now, when it comes to and this will be, like, multi-parted question too, but I'll try to remember the others, I'll ask the first part now. So, the leadership in your club, you probably have better leadership or one of the best uh, of most schools in the nation because you've been so long running, some stemming from TESPA, like original TESPA. You guys ran like you guys did what esports is doing now for a while. So there's probably like some continuity of that with like presidents replacing themselves, leadership replacing themselves, probably like a good structure for teaching people and reteaching, and then people that stuck around like you, where you graduated and you still like helped out afterwards. So I'm assuming you have really, really good club support, be it like a volunteer support. So just
Yeah,
go in depth with that, I guess.
yeah, no, that's a great point, and I really, really love and the pseudo praise because it's not fully true. I would say, to break it to you,
Well, the thing
yeah,
is, it's probably not true to you because you know the actualness of it. But
yeah, it does
if
look
I
like
would
it. I
go
would
into the
say,
details of mine or some of the other schools, you definitely have something that's helpful.
yo,
A lot
yeah,
of us
yeah.
do not have what you have, 'cause I'm sure you could go into the details of where someone's competent, incompetent, the problems, the good things and whatnot, but at least you have people there that care and want it to be a sustained thing and wanna help you build it, somewhat advise you, and push back, and not push back in a malicious way, hopefully. Hopefully, you don't get any of that when, like, the teams start wanting the space and whatnot, but even if you do, it's from a point of, like, care, and you have a big population within those clubs. Um, I would, like, remind that that's, like, a big asset, even though, like, I'm probably, like, having some empathy with you right now where it's like, there's probably some people cases where it's like, "Well, if you knew about this person, you wouldn't be saying that," or, "If you knew
No,
about this year at the club."
yeah, you actually fixed. Yeah, you kind of fixed what I was thinking because I was originally thinking like, man, like have you seen like UC San Diego and how they have like an HR team and how they're recruiting and teaching their next generation and of their club, right?
Yeah,
And they're it's just like Triton Gaming is phenomenal, insane. Like I was like blown away when I was learning. I worked with Uconnect and through Uconnect Esports. Their one of their programs that they were running. I worked with a UC San Diego Triton Gaming student and just learned about their club structure and immediately took him and hit some of his officers to my club on campus and was like talk to each other and learn from each other because I feel like Longhorn Gaming hasn't had that really great passing down of knowledge because it kind of has changed so much since Tespa days where it rebranded, kind of completely cut ties from Tespa people in some aspects because of drama or because of just whatever
yeah,
or
there was
just
a couple
time.
different breaks with that, and we don't have to
Yeah,
talk about it. Yeah,
so many cycles basically from 20 like 10 to now to where a lot of that information and how to structure yourselves has been lost, but also we've just been around so long that it's like you had to rebuild it because everything's different now and the leagues are run differently and the clubs are run differently, etc. More clubs form. But I would say, or I would agree with you from what you brought up. Oh, it is actually an incredibly valuable, phenomenal thing that we have dozens of students. You know, honestly, we have about 7 officers, or I would say 7 like high level directors in the club that manage the main Longhorn Gaming like umbrella organization. But if you want to count like all these other sub communities, they have a handful of people each, depending on the game, that are like super crazy passionate about getting people together to play,
yeah,
a
like,
game. And
sustain
it's
their
just like,
club, yeah,
yeah, and it's just like, holy crap, yeah, you're right. We have, probably, close to 100 students that super duper care about everything about their game or their community or their friend group that was built around this game. So I can pull on
yeah.
them on any time to kind of like want to build something, honestly. And that's really that's a yeah, something I need to think about more or appreciate more.
I think you will, as long as you, like, talk to some people that, like, don't have what you do, like me, I probably have, like, 2 people that would be on caliber of your 100. So I have, like, a club president that loves what he does. Wyatt was a student of mine, he loved what he did, and, like, I got to see how much output a student like that can have, and, like, I was a
Yeah.
student like that too. When I was at SIUE, I was one of those first TESPA chapters, and, I was super passionate, I was in control of, like, the competitive side and just, like, making teams and competing. That alone is, like, basically a job. I didn't have a job in school, so I could do that and build my resume. I thought I was building my resume for something. Couple years after graduating, I was like, "Okay, what did I do this for? There's no jobs like this. I could start coaching league if I want to." But then, like, I did coach league for a couple years. I was on an amateur team in, like, a gaming house and whatnot, and then people just started hiring. Harrisburg started hiring, a couple schools in Ohio started hiring. It was probably like 2 years or maybe 3 years after Dan was doing Maryville, and then RMU did their thing for a little bit. Uh, this can tangent all over the place, but I wanted to finish off asking those questions. I asked about, like, the student volunteers. What about student work? Do you have a so for me at ONU, there's scholarship that comes in through admissions, and let's say a student can get, like, I'm making this up because I don't actually know. I usually send it to admissions and they do everything for me, or like financial aid and they do everything for me. But like a student's able to get 30,000 in scholarship, like all the different things they could do, like grant, whatever. I'm just making this up. Now,
Okay,
like
okay.
if they only get 20,000 because it's academic and esports and a couple other things and whatever, and they have like $5,000 left of scholarship they could have, that becomes like work study money they can tap
Uh,
into. And that's like student worker hours that they can do uh, for the rest of the year. Now that gets pretty confusing. I don't know the details on that. It'd be great if I invited someone on this episode that knows the details of that because what I've heard and read and seen some write-ups on that I haven't read completely is a lot of this money comes from federal, and especially if you're at a state school, you probably can tap into that federal. So I was just curious if there's any like student worker stuff happening, if you know where the money comes from. But it sounds like it's probably different with you with that whole retail aspect where the worker would have to be funded through you, I assume.
yeah. So it is at the moment we're just another area. They cut us up on campus, or they cut us up in our building. If you're a part of that bowling alley, if you're a part of like, um at some other retail place on camp or on inside the student union. So we in our area have the student workers that are paid through our budget that I am unclear of right now because that first year was just kind of like do whatever you
Yeah.
want. But yeah, basically that it comes out of our just kind of general budget for the union as a whole, or university unions. And my
And
actual
when you
student
say union,
workers,
it's, the building?
yeah,
Or is it
so
the okay?
it's too it's yeah, it's confusing. So
Because I
the
was
group of
thinking
built
maybe it's student org, but then it also seems like it's maybe
so
student org and the building?
or I'm not sure what
Student
you meant
org
there.
is like student recreation, student org is
Uh
like the clubs and whatnot.
no, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's completely just the building.
Mhm.
The building is called the Texas Union. The conglomerate of buildings that it's a part of, and which is labeled which is labeled university unions as a whole. It's that's kind of like the
Yeah.
annoying. Yeah. Anyway,
It makes
I'll
sense, it
try
makes sense.
to. So university unions, Texas Union. Anyway, so yeah, I have student labor, of course, that run the facility. I don't run front desk and check people in, maintain the space 24/7. I have a couple of students that are employed
And it's
daily. Or
paid through a budget that you don't see at the moment, I'm assuming?
yes, that's basically it. That's basically it.
And now with the budget that you're creating,
Mhm.
um, that's still budget for running the facility, maybe, like I'm trying to think of, like, facilities cost, but it would be, like, facilities cost, your pay, student labor that you would bring in type pay,
Yeah.
um
Let me actually note there. That's a good point. So yeah, so the my pay student labor cost of like running the lounge and then a future arena, um, you know, cleaning, reservations, that sort of work,
yeah,
as well as like buying things that need to be bought to fix the space or like improve the space or whatever, games for the space maybe. Yeah, that's all mine. But that means also I wanted to point out then the club Longhorn Gaming actually, since it's been elevated to that sponsor student organization status, that's level 2 or max level student organization,
yeah,
it has its own budget completely separate from us at the moment.
yeah,
And
and that's what
I
they
have
would be using to spend towards you to reserve the space, do a LAN, do
No,
whatever.
they're
No?
actually
Okay.
using it all for free. They're using the space for free, and they'll continue to use it for free. Although it's going to be a little bit more like rules to follow, and what is theirs versus not
Yeah,
theirs.
because it's
Um,
kinda like at the opportunity cost of you needing to rent it out or make money with it so that you can keep doing that thing for free for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
Okay.
something to note is the team aspect. Like they're going out to lands. Like we went out to DreamHack Dallas. We went out to CECC, and it's like part of it's my budget to get me out there, but also
Yeah.
part of it's their budget to rent a car or whatever and feed them. So it gets really confusing now of like, wait a minute, we're in the same area, but we have two different budgets. And eventually, once we do the separation of varsity and club teams, there's going to be like, are they going to be absorbed now into ours, the varsity teams? And
Yeah,
that
that's gonna
there's
get crazy. 'Cause
yeah.
I'm sure your department, your supervisor, that whole building and structure of, like, budgeting, they're not gonna know what it looks like to see, renting buses, vans, fees for conferences for the games or stuff like that, so that's not something that's
Well, they're like capable and like experienced with it actually, because there's another student group that is advised and like plugged into a department on campus that's purely for like event, like um I don't even want to like I don't want to say just events, but yeah, pretty much they're called events and entertainment.
We
So they
have
just
something like that here, that's also that upper level student organization, so, like, when orientation happens or when freshmen come in for the first week, they do a lot of those events, maybe similar for you?
yeah, pretty much. There's like a combination of those types of events and then like other one-off random events that they host throughout campus and
Yeah,
um
it sounds like we have the same thing. Ours is
yeah.
called student planning committee where they just, like,
Yeah,
plan things
yeah.
for the students to do, use up some of the higher end budgets that they have access to.
Yeah, so they
Oh,
have
your
like an
varsity teams would use
endowment.
that?
So no, I was just like, since they're familiar with like how that structure kind of like is processed, I'm assuming that
Oh, okay, okay, that
we'll
makes
end up having this new brand of or this new department brand and area kind of configured to encapsulate the teams, and that'll be like Texas Esports, UT Esports, Unions Esports, whatever.
yeah. And then, the third thing, I'm surprised I remembered all of this, so I wanted to ask about I forgot what the previous 2 were, but this one is, like, scholarships. It's probably not happening because it's a state school, or is there something?
At the moment, not really easily done from my department, so it's
Yeah,
something that I would have to, I think, just get like a donation big enough to like make an endowment and then give that to scholarship or give that out as scholarship. We do have actually potentially one coming or like in play from I don't know if Dell is like interested in doing it or they were talking about it or if I can even say, but there's a
yeah.
threshold basically, if you give like 50K, then there's like a forever uh rec- forever like whatever generation of interest money endowment blah blah blah
Like
that's given
reoccurring you
out.
can use?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. So I'm hoping that that's how we kind of do it. Um, unless we just have like an excess amount of like revenue from reservations and camps in the future, and we can actually use that for like paying students more directly for their services or something. Once we have like the arena going on, and we might be hiring for like um, people that would be running the production rooms and stuff, or people that would be team managers for the varsity teams. Maybe
yeah.
that might be in order.
That's where I am right now too, so the story of my scholarships at ONU is, so I got brought in with the clear goal of, like, you need to recruit a lot of people with most
Mhm.
private schools are like this. They don't want to be a part of that cliff of the students not going to college as much, lower populations of students going to college in the next whatever amount of years.
Yeah.
Most private schools are afraid of that, and esports is a STEM side kick type thing, and we started to do more engineering, more computer science, so it made sense for them to bring it in, and it made sense for me of what their goal was, is, like, bring in a lot of recruits. So what I did from the get-go is I just brought in a ton of games was gonna equal a lot of recruits, so I did 11 games right from the get-go,
Wow.
and when they asked, like I was asking them how they do scholarship, and they didn't really do scholarship because it's a Division III school, meaning you're not allowed to give scholarship. They gave some scholarship to theater students, like talent level people that would be like on the band or do their plays, and they have like a retail portion. I'm saying retail, it's not our word, it's your word, so you understand it. They have a retail portion to their theaters and operas and stuff like that. So they give some scholarship to that to uphold the talent level. Um, so that all made sense to me, and I said, it always made sense that a school needs a budget, and they're gonna have a pool of money, and the pool of money is gonna feed into that budget of, like, giving scholarships out. Every other school around me did that, every school I talked to did that. I haven't heard of anyone not doing it. So, at the beginning, I was like, I could probably get a lot of people if I had no limitation, just like a base ratio, giving out like 2,000 a year with no cap. And I said, like, "Do we still make money, uh, bringing in a student and giving 2,000 a year?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course, like, no brainer." And I said, like, let's not budget it then. Let's just have it be a reoccurring thing that we can, like, after the fact, pay into that budget as we get more students, because those students are probably gonna be high retention too, and they are. Like, now that I'm in my 5th year, I'm in, like, 90 percentile retention of, like, keeping a student for a long time. Um,
Nice.
that was really good. I was, so you've probably seen that by Chris, with Esports Foundry, the metrics that come out.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like one of the top recruiters, like year after year, pushing like 60 recruits that are like scholarship recruits. And
Wow.
the only ones like going near my numbers were either like state schools or online schools or private schools that have done it for a while and like just had a history of it. So I was at like 50 recruit, 60 recruit, but post COVID, it was just like insane for me to handle. So like I really dropped it down. I don't remember why I started saying this, if I needed to like make it relevant for you or just share my story with like the scholarship
No,
thing.
that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm like trying to figure out. I was learning from Mike Aguilar, Moog at OU, and like how he
Okay.
was kind of structuring his system, and it's just good to like hear more about like what is working for folks or what is like something that people are now straying away from. Like I heard
Did he
a
have
little bit
something that
from.
played through for getting scholarship?
Well, like he's actually working towards getting, I think, a crap ton more like full time employees. It seems
Yeah.
that are going to be funded differently. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it just like was getting me flashbacks to that conversation. Same
Mm.
with UT Dallas. UT Dallas had mentioned to me that their level of scholarships is just like unsustainable, and their kind of like predicament, and just giving me warning signs of like how to best operate things once you do get a little bit of funding.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm honestly thinking that if we generate enough support from my end, this is just a slight tangent.
Yeah, yeah.
If we basically do enough good PR from all our two spaces and the club and everything that's going to be evolving over the next 6 months, I can see our dean of students, who's the vice president of student affairs, or in that office. It's kind of like complicated. They're like a dual position. Um,
We have
just
something similar, so it makes sense.
okay. So
Yeah.
I could see them kind of like cracking open the like you know special use funds bag that might be you know tens of millions of dollars because we're rich in oil money and all sorts of things, and just be like,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, is that something that y'all are interested in, shilling out, a small percentage to develop esports a little bit more so internally versus like waiting a number of years until Dell's, thing falls off, or something, like that happens to where more people want to come on board as sponsors, or, you know, yeah, yeah, I just think internally, I think there could be a big push if it doesn't come externally, because there's
Yeah.
money to go around. You just really need to convince the right people,
And
and
talk to them and let them know what
yeah,
you're doing and the benefits of it. That's what I was gonna bring up is, like, so it becomes such a complicated thing to talk about because I have, like, so many questions. So, one of them is, so, like, a strategy you could use to, like, start to route that now. So, you're gonna start having clubs using your space. You're gonna have varsity teams. They're gonna be going to events, building a reputation for themselves. From that, you're probably gonna get, like, people joining the school because of that, people coming here because of that. It's gonna sustain itself in that way of, like, the club kinda doing what varsity programs at, like, privates and other, like, scholarship level supported or, like, the employee is doing just the esports stuff supported. Um, but you have people doing that for you for free at your school. Now, that could be seen as, like, a good thing, it could be seen as a bad thing because if people keep doing it for free, what's to incentivize the school to support
exactly.
it properly? And this is, like, a huge topic I wanna eventually get into with, like, a few other directors, and, like, I don't know if I told you, but I have Greg coming in 2 weeks from now from UT Dallas.
Oh,
He's probably yeah,
wait,
so
like former UT Dallas, right?
yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah,
he was like he agreed to it, and I'm happy he did because I know the way he's gonna talk. Um, I wanted to find someone that was, like, post-collegiate, that was okay with talking about the things of, like,
that's perfect.
the opportunities that are there and the things that got missed out, and the things that got missed out so hard to make someone leave type thing. So, I'm not gonna push them too hard. It'd be cool to get some of that stuff, but, I think the state schools are gonna have a pretty big problem that only the smarter leaders, the smarter employees, the people that stay there more than 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, um, but your school's in such a different space because, like, your club leaders that graduate, they still stick around and help a little bit, and
Yeah,
that, like, further sustains that it's gonna live on without the support that you essentially want from the school. The support being, like, some kinda scholarship fund that is incentivized by, like, you're gonna get more recruits, you're gonna get retention, you're gonna get, like, marketing and PR and stuff from that, but the thing is the clubs are doing that all on their own, and, like, when you tap into that San Diego, uh I should probably talk to them. If you would think, like, they're the top school, it'd be awesome to talk to someone from that club, because 'cause it'd probably rustle their feathers a little bit of, like, they're doing so much of what the school could be doing for them for free. Yeah, they're building their resume, they're doing what they want to, they're supporting what they want, but it's also blocking what could be. I don't know if you agree with that. It's the way I kinda see it.
yeah, them specifically are is a little bit different because I was speaking to more so their gaming club, which like runs their big like annual expo, like gaming expo events and stuff. Their esports side for the teams and stuff is kind of separate. It's not Triton Gaming, from my understanding. There's like a UCSD esports
Yeah, and that would
separate.
make sense too with, like, the way clubs are. So, like, maybe that school has, like, the tiered, and, the people that do the expo is, like, the upper tier, and then the esports people are, like, tier 2 or 3 or something like that. And my school at, SIUE, which was, like, 30, 40,000, like, sub-state school type thing, uh,
Yeah.
it's so close to just being able to die every couple years if someone doesn't support it student-wise, and then if someone doesn't, like, teach new incoming leadership. Uh, so, like, that's one danger. It doesn't seem like most big state schools have that danger because 'cause they're so well ran and alumni stick around, and there's just people that care that are around that help, and there's organizations that help too now, kinda like what Tesla was going to be. I don't know what organization would be now.
It
I
was
think there's just
Uconnect
a
kind of indirectly, but now it's like not as much Uconnect because Uconnect's kind of been stepping back
Uconnect
and
probably was for Texas, but the way that we saw it when we were first starting, because 'cause we've been in tap with Uconnect for couple years now because, I really wanted to learn how to market my program, and I
mm,
didn't have the time to do it. I didn't have a student that cared enough to do it. So then it was like, who's a third party person that could do it for us? And Uconnect was that answer. And then when we started using Uconnect, and it seems like other schools using Uconnect for the same reason. Yeah, it's like a networking thing, but like anything esports structure is like a networking thing where most of us came from somewhat of the same background and we can help each other. I think like it's just the people, not the organization, helping the structure. Yeah, I can't really think of there being an actual thing. Like, there's NACAT for us, the employees, there's
yeah,
NACE for, like, their competition thing that happens.
like the students kind of just get together hopefully throughout their little like regional competitions, and I always feel like that isn't enough though for like the clubs, because the clubs are like have this, for the larger clubs especially, just don't have that direct connection to the competition aspect, so then they don't talk with other clubs and learn from other clubs unless there's like a
Yeah,
summit of some sort that Uconnect or somebody similar hosts, which yeah, like in Texas, like Uconnect will do only Texas schools, you're right, and like I didn't realize, there's a lot of people that aren't getting to meet and like figuring out from each
and
other
that's
what.
another reason why I wanted to talk to you is because, and especially just people in Texas, because I think Texas is, like, another up and comer. Illinois is close to me, and I'm from Illinois, I know some of that. Indiana's close to me, they're doing some of the same stuff. Michigan's close to me. Um They're pretty advanced as well, same as Ohio, but Texas is advanced, but you guys kinda keep everything within yourselves because you have so many people around you. So, like, there's so many schools that are so big that the competition and lands and whatever you would do, sometimes is just internal completely because you have so many
Yeah,
people. And sometimes, like the Uconnect thing, or there's probably other lands where it's like, you only have to invite, like, 2 or 3 other schools that are close by to you, and boom, you have like a fully fleshed out thing that would be the equivalent of a big state land here in Ohio or like a big conference land within the Midwest for us because we're just so spread out and kind of like fragmented a bit.
yeah, interesting. That is pretty interesting, and I feel like we are like internally a little bit like fighting with like Austin, or UT Austin, and the surrounding schools from UT are kind of like pretty small, or or spread out. But like there's a huge hub like in Dallas, Fort Worth area, which is UT Dallas, UT Arlington, University of North Texas, and then a bunch of smaller schools around the area. It's like we're you know trying to learn from each other and work with each other, and we'll meet up at things. But yeah, we could do better. But yeah, yeah.
And there's gonna be people that are gonna be doing better, like, for you soon if it's not already happening. Another reason why I wanted to talk to, like, Texas is I don't know what's going on in Austin in terms of, like, companies that are there that are gonna be helping out. I know that in Dallas, there's Envy and there's a couple other,
uh,
like, esports organizations that I'm assuming they probably are tapped into these colleges 'cause, I went to a scouting grounds for League in 2017 when I, like, first started working this job here. And, like, I was talking to a lot of the GMs of the teams, the guy from Clutch Gaming, and I was in Houston, when he started doing all that. And I was really
nice.
tapping into the question of, like, is college gonna be relevant for scouts? Is it gonna be relevant for, like, that pipeline? And they all want it to be. It's just very hard for them to know if it is or not. And it's probably still happening. I'm sure, like so Immortals talked to us when they moved to Detroit, I think. And I think Immortals is I don't know what's going on. It seemed like really disorganized on how they were trying to mingle with, like, the community and trying to geolocate a little bit. Because most of these esports companies, it's like LA for in person, online is the rest of the business. There's not that many that yeah, there's not that many that do,
That's it.
like
That's it.
yeah,
Honestly.
there's not that many that tap into, like, the city or the area, and right before COVID, I was like, "It's gonna change now." Because right before COVID or a couple years before COVID, when Overwatch League was starting, I was in Houston. There was the Houston Outlaws, I think, and
Yes.
that was owned by Optic,
Yep. So
and
optics around now still
yeah,
in Dallas.
and I'm sure they're gonna be tapping into colleges if they aren't already, but, the Clutch Gaming and the Houston Outlaws, they were both starting when I was living in Houston, and there was, like, gaming coffee shops, gaming, like, sushi bars and stuff like that, the equivalent of, like, arcade bars that are, like, pretty prevalent everywhere, there was, like, that plus, like, you're watching LCS or something, like what Buffalo Wild Wings tries to do a little bit. And they were packed, like, there was tons of people there, especially when the named teams started doing it, like Clutch Gaming and,
Yeah.
the Outlaws. And I even went to, like, the first Overwatch League. I didn't care about Overwatch, and I still kinda, like, don't pay attention to it because 'cause I'm not, like, a big fan, I'm, like, just a manager of, like, teams. So, I went to, like, an event to see, like, how packed it would be. They rented out, like, a theater, and it was completely filled. You couldn't sit down, there were people waiting outside, there were people just, like, buying T-shirts and stuff
Damn.
like that, and it was a pretty sizable theater, like a normal not a huge one that you would see, like, a really good, like, opera play or something, but, like, a big enough one that's, like, in every city, and I was like, "Damn, this is, like, the beginning. This is, like, geolocation happening," but it hasn't yet, but I think it's going to, and I think colleges are gonna help that, I think high schools are gonna help that,
Yep.
because I think the first couple teams that start tapping into some kinda land support like, imagine if you were in Dallas or if you have a team near you right now, and they were just like, "We're gonna help you do this land, use your facilities, bring in as many high schoolers as you can." They'll see whatever output they're looking for, be it, like, just eyes on them or selling something, or I'm sure it'll be fruitful for them once they start doing it, but they probably don't even have people in charge of doing that yet, so it's just not happening.
Yeah. All the cutbacks and stuff. But I feel
Yeah,
like there's like definitely have been initiatives like you see Gen G like do a lot of
mhm.
right university initiatives in like Kentucky or Kansas, right, or
Do you
whoever, I
know
can't
any
remember.
details of that? 'Cause I would love to, like, hear more details of it because to me, the Gen G, the TSM, the Evil Geniuses, student type things, it
Yeah.
seems like they give them a role that's not actually the role, and they're more so like an intern, and it
Yeah.
could be like an internship that leads into a job that they're not doing yet.
Yeah, it does feel like
I
that
haven't
from
seen
what
the otherwise.
I didn't deep dive, or like I was of course aware of it when it was happening and starting to pop off, like TSMU and the Evil Geniuses
Mhm.
Scholars or something, right? Or, yeah, all their Discord servers popped up, and a lot of collegiate esports like um, club leaders ended up kind of getting sucked into them, and it's like, oh, okay, this is a cool thing. We you get to like scrape the brands that you want to work for,
Yeah.
potentially, and learn like what their insides are up to. But yeah, I don't know if wasn't there like a Twitter thread of somebody saying like they all kind of like fell apart, or a lot of them just aren't, you know basically
If there
operating
was,
as
I don't remember seeing it, but the
or
rhetoric
somebody
I have,
mentioned.
I don't know if it's from, like, actual things that I see or whatnot, or maybe, like, other podcasts I've listened to or other events I've listened to, because 'cause I've listened to the Uconnect things that happen every once in a while. I've listened to, like, things that Spin do or maybe Evil Geniuses will do something, whatever, and it just seems like if they were in that position to be an ambassador, an advisor, or something like that, they'd have a lot of time to be able to learn what's going on in the nation and being able to teach that, understand it, bring it to their brand, whatever. And they're just not. It seems like they more so stay within their own thing. So, like, if someone from your club got that position, it seems like they teach from their club's point of view and they keep doing your club's point of view stuff because there's already a lot to do there and they just stay within that bubble. The bubble doesn't really expand with this new ambassador job or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's also just like the kind of like pinning or like anchoring part of like you only associate with like the fans of team, and then it kind of like
Yeah.
separates out. It's like,
Yeah.
well, if
I can
there
see that
isn't,
too.
a lot of fans at this school, it's like they just kind of like miss out on that, and it's kind of weird dynamic there where it's not like a teamless brand. So kind
Makes
of
sense.
weird. Yeah.
Did you
I
give your I'm trying to remember back to, like, the original with this statement. Did you give your opinion on, like, if the clubs like, we talked about San Diego a little bit and started to tangent and all this stuff. If these clubs are actually hindering support, like, do you think that's a real thing?
uh I actually never thought about it that way, and then you got me slightly convinced that it's a possibility for some schools. Um, I do think that it like for and I'm kind of thinking it from my perspective and our predicament and my 1 year of now experience not being a club leader and instead being like removed from it now,
Yeah.
um, or having a buffer of sorts that when you don't have any other people working on this big project of whatever collegiate esports might be on your campus, I feel like it's like a adding jet fuel, to have all these people kind of like working, building the community and building these events and like taking initiatives because they are passionate amongst themselves on like sustaining this club atmosphere and everything associated with the club. Um, and it's like just like difficult to control and maintain. But it is like I wouldn't say ever retroactively like taking away from like what the university's building or what the university should be like working towards. I think it's always going to be a net positive in the long run. Um, if that club is well maintained and
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. I guess I have, like, more of a pessimistic or efficiency argument to it 'cause there always will be a net positive. If you have passionate people creating a community for people to not be in that void space and not be making friends and networking and doing all these good things that these clubs and communities are doing, it sucks. That'd be a bad situation.
yeah.
So, awesome that people are volunteering to do it, awesome that there is some, like, pay to be able to do it, there is some, like, legacy structure to keep them not relearning the same thing over and over again. So, yeah, all of that is, of course, good. The only thing I'm bringing up is, like, how much better could it be if we ask for more? Because, like, when we look at what football has, when we look at what, sports has, especially at these big state schools, like, even the fringe sports, like, if you look at, UCLA for their gymnastics, like, I grew up breakdancing and doing gymnastics, and I had a friend from my hometown go to UCLA, and she just had everything, like, so much support, so much, like, it was, like, me doing my club and me doing all my stuff at my school compared to, like, what she was getting there, and, like, now she's she does, like, stunting and stuff in LA for, like, Star Wars shows and all kinds of cool stuff
Damn.
like that, and
Okay.
it was a complete stem of, like, having that support, having, like and the thing is, there's even with the best club leaders and whatnot, you're gonna have, like, gaps of, like, people could be helped so much more. So, like, even with my story of me doing what I'm doing at ONU for whatever amount of years, I'm going to start having alumni that are going to be like 10 years older than the incoming students or the students that are like internships age. And I'm gonna be able to lead them to those people, and those people are gonna be what her story was of, like, she got that stunting job through that story. So, like, imagine if Wyatt, through this work and doing all this stuff, Wyatt ends up working at LCK, like, that's his dream, he wants to go do that. And I start having students because I stay here for 15 years, and I'm like, "This is your dream, here, learn from this guy, go here." I don't think a student or club will be able to do that. It'd be rare if they're able to do that, and that's what, like, having us, like, people that are, like, employed, like, a staple point that's not gonna change, creating the better opportunities than what they're just creating for themselves. Because there's maybe levels to it. There's, like, a level of, like, you have the community, you have team to play with, you're making friends, boom, the club's doing that, that's awesome, and even if the school's not gonna support doing that, that's good enough. And then there's another level where it's like, okay, those people are getting paid to do it. Those people are, there long enough to where they're creating that network. Case study that I just gave a case study for. Um, Maybe you're part of the pipeline of people going pro, like how sports do. Maybe you're part of like a whole different thing of you're able to market like this huge brand that you create, like with their teams. Like Maryville's probably doing that for themselves. Illinois State's probably going to be able to do it soon if they're not. They probably are. But the bigger opportunity here is the state schools, and most state schools have those clubs. That story coming back is like the clubs are kinda hindering it a little bit. That's how I felt for a couple years now, and when I thought about, like, how passionate I was and all my other club leaders were at my school and what my club is now, so I didn't tell what my club is now at SIUE, it's a state school, like 30, 40,000 students. They brought me in for advising. They saw that I created the club and it was still going on, and it's still alive, and it's recruiting a lot of people, it's retaining students, it's becoming like a market aspect. Um, I said, "You can do it, like, 3 ways. You can have 1, which I think you should do. It's, like, by far the best way to do it, is, like, hire a couple people, do teams legit, make it a D2, D3, D1 sport. Put it under athletics if it makes sense, put it on somewhere else if athletics doesn't like it, and then make a facility, start doing these things, and here's all the, like, incentives you'll get, here's all the benefits you'll get." And I was like, "2nd tier, don't do as much, but still do a little bit, whatever." 3rd tier was what a lot of schools opt into. Just build a facility, that's it. Let their ID card let them in, but you were at least a step up, like, for sure a step up, where it's like you have someone controlling it, you have someone saying who can and can't, you have someone making it feasible, like, financially. But, like, for my school, like, they have a really good Call of Duty team, and they want to practice or play their matches in that room. That room doesn't have a manager that schedules it out. They can't do that. It's not nobody
Yeah.
owns it, right? So that's a big problem. There's been a few other schools that have that same example. Um, I don't know. I'm kinda tangenting on what I've learned so far, but
No, I see what you
I think
now
you see
mean
a
more
little bit,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, of like how the club kind of causes the school to trip over itself a little bit or not want to like yeah take more action.
Yeah,
But I
but see,
think
if I would say that on Twitter and, like, just say, like, "Yo, these" like, imagine if I said this on Twitter and said, like, "All you clubs are, like, super holding your schools back from supporting a better thing." All they're gonna hear is, "I'm doing something great. Who are you to assume there's something better?" And then they're gonna shit on me. But this whole talked out thing is, like, I don't think very many people would disagree that there's some route of doing things a little bit differently to get the better.
well like what would actually be the actionable from that?
I mean,
Like the clubs, these giant clubs should like boycott like doing anything esports for a second and then be like, yo, look at
see,
all
I don't know
these.
how much power that actually has with a state school.
Yeah.
I know at a private school, it would have a huge amount of power. Like, if there's a private school that, like, they don't have scholarship, they don't have coaches, they don't have a good enough facility, they don't have, like, what they want. They see that they could be there. There's enough of them to where it's financially sustaining the school to have it. And, like, schools have to, like, I don't think there's any college that doesn't support entertainment. Like, you have to. That's part of the college experience. That's part of why in-person colleges are still alive, because it creates the person, and it has all these other avenues to create the person. That's why frats are still around, that's why all these clubs are still around, sports are within colleges. There's there's so many incentives that the schools know they have to do, and esports is becoming one of those. Um, and for us to not push ourselves into that, I think could be a missed opportunity for a while. I think inevitably it's just gonna be here. We're way too popular, there's way too many of us. There's some schools doing it right that are pushing the agenda. Like, if some of your students or some other state school students start pointing at Illinois State and they're like, "Look at this, like, why can't we do this? This school's nothing compared to us." Like, some people are gonna have that opinion, whatever. Uh, it it's gonna change, but the actual actionable, dude, I don't know.
I mean, like honestly, the
You
the
probably
the
have a
big
better actionable than I do
yeah,
because
well,
you know how it
yeah.
ticks there, but the thing is like, that's a dangerous thing to say, and that's what I learned with working here is, like, you'll start to see what's going on with your community, with your program, with your school's can-dos and can-not-dos, and you're like, "Man, I could just, like, tell these people what to do. I could tell my students what to do. I could tell my other departments, people near me, other head coaches." But then that's union type talk or something like that. I don't know how unions work. It could be like stemming mutiny type thing or insubordination type stuff. You definitely don't want that. We
I
already
was
feel
more
like we're
so
walking on eggshells type thing.
I was more
Sorry.
so thinking like, you know, probably the club should be thoroughly documenting exactly what their, you know, time commitment is like and
Their
what their
metrics at the
what
school.
their
Yeah.
what their value proposition and really is or has been. Well, like what value are they creating and how much time they're spending doing it and all the resources that are like, not going towards, increasing that or changing that. And I feel
Yeah.
like if you just pitch that correctly, then it should be, an automatic like win for the university to support more
What I
or
would say is I've never seen
recognize
an
it.
internal pitch. I've never seen an internal pitch work, ever. It's always been
Mm,
some kind of an external it'd be great to know if, like, you ever learn it, I ever learn it, anyone watching ever learns it. Like, is there some kinda internal pitch that worked? Like, sometimes, like, sure, people say, like, they get increased salary for an internal pitch, but an internal pitch to increase the program, usually not. It's usually some kinda external, "We wanna be as good as this school. We see other schools doing it."
that's
It's
fair.
almost as
Yeah.
if the story of how you got your job, it's the story of how I got my job too. It's most people doing that. Um, I haven't seen it at all. I mean, maybe Akron could talk towards it because they're actually fixing some of their things. That's the only recent story I think I know where it's like Akron was a bit fragmented, with their facilities. They had their own problems they wanted to overcome from the school, and then they got successful enough to where they're getting their fix. I don't know what the details of that fix is. I don't remember if they actually told me. If they told me, I forgot. But maybe that would be one of those case studies, but I don't know what the actual 'cause it sounds easy. You get all these metrics they care about, retention, hours spent, maybe fundraising, events, whatever, and then you could even go further, and this further is another, like, trouble state scenario. If you go further and you compare yourself, your program, your entity with another on campus, that other will get wind of it, and you're shit on. Like, that's what seems to happen. It is what happened with me. It is what happened with a few other people I know that have attempted. And this becomes like the thing I'm scared of talking about on a podcast like this is like you could go in more detail and it'll make way more sense. But then those details are not the details you should be like saying you did internally. It's not a process. It's a normal process that a lot of schools go through, a lot of jobs go through, a lot of people managing people go through. But it's not something you wanna just, like, endorse and say, like, "Yeah, this is how we're trying to get the betterment for us or our program, and this is what these people tried." That actionable is definitely hard, but it'd be awesome if it was real straightforward and it's like you start getting all these metrics and you present it to a person that cares about that presentation, and they're like, "Damn, we've been sleeping on this."
Yeah. I actually that's what I did before I left UT as a student. I like wrote up everything that I possibly could into like a cohesive document, sent that off to the dean of students. No idea if that was like any sort of influencing factor to when they like, positioned themselves with Dell and Alienware to build the space. So I don't know how much of an influence that was versus the comparison of like this state school and this state school in our conference, the Big 12 or the SEC as we're transitioning into that, you
Yeah.
know has it, so we need it. It might be just have been like another tiny drop in that bucket of like, oh yeah, okay, now I understand what the club is doing and how we should better support it. But also, we were gonna kind of do it anyways because competition spirit is strong amongst
Yeah, yeah.
those big schools.
Do you have to cut off at the 30-minute mark?
Not actually. I do need to ask my wife about something at the 30-minute mark, but I don't know if I need to cut off until I ask her. What about
Okay.
you? You have a team. You have a game or something, right?
So I did something, it was actually, Ashley, the girl you met at NAKED that got me into this. It's called Coach Rivals, where a bunch of working Scholastic Esports people make teams over the summer, and we just play. And
Oh yeah.
it seems like it's almost completely high school people.
Oh
Not a lot of low rank people, like, trying to learn the game, so it's a different group of people than I was used to, but
damn.
it's still cool to see what they're doing and what they can ask me and whatnot. Um, I had one more question, I completely forgot about it. It could be okay.
No, yeah, go for it. If it could be short and sweet, or like
It
we
I
can try to make it direct
it was
if
gonna
you
be a
find it.
long one, and I'm really sad I can't remember it now, but
Oh no.
most likely, it sounds like you need to cut off, and we'll just do the ending. So, I wanna give you the chance to, like, say anything you're doing, anything you appreciate about this, so anything you want us to change, but more so, like, what are you doing? What do you wanna
Uh
showcase?
yeah. I I would love to just say that I feel like there's never enough content in, new spaces like esports, like collegiate esports, or innovative content, honestly. So that's what I'm going to be kind of like looking towards the future, to directing my program as well as like my just like personal efforts,
Yeah,
telling stories, building in public, and telling those stories of building in public, um, whether it be related to, the club life, the state school life, or just collegiate esports in general. That's what I'm really looking forward to doing with Longcord Gaming, kind of at my right hand side of like joining me, building a little production team, utilizing our studio space once we have that, and making that prosper. Whether it's you know YouTube content, short form content, whatever
yeah,
social media content, content in general is what I'm really looking forward to doing. Even on my like personal stuff, I'm Ace SB literally everywhere. I'll be trying to kind of like put out more of what I want to see out there from other universities that are diving into esports, or just kind of like esports in general, or like internet media in general, if you want to go that broad,
yeah.
because there's just a lot of opportunity for us to make really cool stuff, and tell great stories and influence other people to also share and build. Um, Something that I just recently published was old footage from 4 years ago when I was a part of the League of
I
Legends
watched
team.
it, yeah,
Oh
yeah,
god.
I watched it.
but but it was raw footage mostly. It was the lost, like episodes. So just to give a little bit of context, and I'm gonna shorten it to like a 1 minute spiel. I was a part of the League of Legends team as a support substitute player, but I was only kind of like added on to the team in 2019 because I was shooting the pseudo first documentary series, collegiate esports documentary series, I think at the time.
Mhm,
Um, and it was a week by week, recap of our League of Legends competitive season and CLOL in College League of Legends of 2019. It was the last year that the regions were given scholarship funds, so we all won, 56, or we all won $8,000 in scholarship, $56,000 as we won our Conference of the South, and it was probably the best team that we've ever had since the first team that we ever had, which was like Kiwi Kid and a bunch of other pro like level
oh,
players.
I remember, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
I haven't heard that name in a while.
that was our alumni back in the day. He dropped out, and we had other pro players that were like, or like pro level players that were really good in the first couple of seasons of League of Legends. Nowadays, we're not as good with more people recruiting and such, but that was our time to play on stage, and we lost power. And after building these episodes like week by week, I did 3 episodes. Um, I kind of got burnt out, and we lost power for a vital play-ins match that would pretty much easily put us in a position to win some final like matches to go to California, because we already won our conference.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we had to do this other little play-in bracket. Um, but we lost power for some of those vital matches and put us into a position where we had to play against Columbia College, who had Misty Stumpy, and it was an Nintendo, or like, a lot of other previously high level
yeah, yeah.
ranked like amateur players. Um, and we unfortunately were not able to overcome them with their full roster. Although we beat them earlier in the year without their full roster, so it was pretty unfortunate that we couldn't go to California because of that. So I
Yeah.
finally 4 years later put that footage out, and things like that, those stories that I wish I kind of like put that all out when it was like happening, so it was more relevant, is what triggered me to actually push for the university to build our esports space and have a varsity esports program in the making and hire a position. And that's where it invigorated me to kind of like be in the position that I am now and lead what we're leading and stuff like that. So I just think those stories are really important, and learning about like filmmaking and the democratization of filmmaking, how easy it is to kind of just record things and make a podcast, I think is
Yeah.
like incredibly important for all future generations. And of course, it's naturally happening with TikTok and short form media and phones, etc. But I just want to keep on kind of like pushing that through esports, because that's what I'm working in. But that's what I see myself doing as I grow past this too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have, like, a department degree, stuff like that you can tap into at the school to maybe make it more official? 'Cause I'd see a huge opportunity in that with, like, other schools would watch that and wanna see, like, some kinda glimpse if there's, like, some kind of academic aspect or something they care about type aspect. Like, whatever you're building, it's being built for a reason, and if you could showcase it, I could see people wanting to see that, you know?
Yeah, haven't
Yeah.
yet, because we're so siloed here. I have to go and reach out and convince people to like listen to me. But I haven't been doing the greatest of jobs. I've been hunkered down, just like
No, I
making
know,
sure the
yeah.
space runs. But
I
that's the
always say
goal.
the same thing too,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
So the
so
goal
hard.
is we have like a sports communication department that I'm like, oh, you should now utilize our spaces, talk about how they're useful, you know,
Or
and
maybe you just make it and say, "Can you endorse this? Can you, like, put
yeah,
it out for
yeah,
me?"
or
Yeah.
that, yeah, anything related to that. We have so many different people on campus that would probably be interested if we just like caught their attention the right way. So
Yeah,
it'll be a lot of building this upcoming year to make that happen.
yeah. Well, good luck with it. It sounds like you have, like, really good support. You're a really good person for the job. You understand what's going on there. I hope nothing but the best.
Thanks, I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's it. We can leave now. It wasn't 2 hours long.
Woo!
Thank you for coming on. It was awesome to learn what's going on in Texas and at your school and everything with you.
Yeah, no, I
Thanks again.
appreciate so much learning from other folks in the industry, and I can't always stay in the Texas bubble or whatever bubble that I'm in. Like we're all in our own bubbles, and it's nice to kind of branch out and
Yeah, yeah.
meet and make these things happen.
Alright. Well, that's it. Thank you.